Hi, I'm Dana Stevens, and this is the Slate Culture Gabfest Woke Superman Saves the Box Office edition. It's Wednesday, July 16th, 2025, and this week we will be discussing, first off, Superman, James Gunn's new film that reboots the venerable comic book superhero. Next, we'll talk about Too Much, a new Netflix sitcom that was created by Lena Dunham and her husband Luis Felber. It stars Meg Stalter as a transplant from NYC to London who falls in love with a British indie musician. Finally, we will take on a cultural form we've never talked about before in the Slate Culture Gabfest, interactive theater. A few weeks ago, Stephen Metcalf, Isaac Butler, and I, along with our producer Ben Frisch, took a field trip to experience Viola's Room, a new theatrical installation created by some of the same team that a few years ago had a huge success with the piece Sleep No More. I'm joined today by Isaac Butler, filling in for Julia Turner this week. Isaac is the author of The Method and also the upcoming book, The Perfect Moment. Give me the subtitle to that, Isaac.
The subtitle for now, who knows, they may change it, is The Religious Right, American Art, and the End of the 20th Century.
It's kind of about censorship in the 90s?
Yeah, it's about the culture wars of the 80s and 90s. It's about a moment in which the religious right decided to essentially pick a series of fights over cultural stuff, but instead of it being superhero movies or whatever, it was actually like government-funded experimental art. So it's this weird period of time when, an essay by David Wojnarowicz is front page news below the fold, while the Berlin Wall falling is above the fold. It was like, and so it's about that conflict. It's a kind of military history of a culture war, you could say.
And when's it coming out?
Next year. Exact publication date not yet set, but I would guess early fall.
All right. Well, based on The Method and the importance that book holds in my household, I cannot wait for The Perfect Moment. And as always, we're joined by our beloved Stephen Metcalf. Steve, I'm not going to describe your upcoming book because I know it's still under wraps, but hello. And nice to have you here from Vermont remotely.
Thank you, Dana. Hey, good morning.
At Sierra, discover great deals on top brand workout gear, like high-quality walking shoes, which might lead to another discovery.
40,000 steps, baby. Who's on top now, Karen?
You've taken the office step challenge a step too far. Don't worry, though. Sierra also has yoga gear. It might be a good place to find your zen. Discover top brands at unexpectedly low prices. Sierra, let's get moving.
Member Week is here at Lowe's. Don't miss your chance to get up to 40% off hundreds of items like paint, tools, home essentials, and more. Shop our exclusive deals happening in-store and online now through July 18th. Not a rewards member? Join for free today and get ready to save more. Lowe's, we help, you save. Loyalty program subject to terms and conditions. Details at lowes.com/terms. Subject to change.
In 1938, a pair of Jewish immigrants from Eastern Europe created the first Superman comic book, arguably maybe the first superhero, certainly the first one in the lineup of superheroes that we still talk about and make movies about today. In the 21st century, this refugee from the planet Krypton has had a hard time establishing himself as a character on the big screen. There have been two separate attempts already at launching a Superman franchise in the 21st century to match the massive success of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. First, there was Bryan Singer's Superman Returns in 2006. Then came Zack Snyder's Man of Steel in 2013, which led to the unfortunate sequel Batman vs. Superman in 2016. None of these quite managed to get Superman off the ground. This time around, the character is in the hands of James Gunn, best known as the creator of the Guardians of the Galaxy series for Marvel. He's now the co-CEO of DC Films, which is positioning this Superman as the first in a cinematic universe of its own. We're going to hear a clip from early in the film. We are inside the icy fortress of solitude, and you must imagine that Superman, played by David Corenswet, is being attended upon by his robot butlers, I guess you'd call them.
Robot butlers, yeah.
And the two robot butler voices you'll hear are Alan Tudyk and Pom Klementif. You'll also hear the voice of Krypto, that's the name of the super dog, who we'll discuss. He is a major character in this movie, much more than just a sidekick. Let's listen.
Sir?
What is this? Krypto! What the hey, dude? I thought you destroyed the whole Superman robots. I thought I told you to keep an eye on him.
We feed the canine, but he is unruly. And he realizes we are not flesh and blood and couldn't, in our heart of hearts, care less whether he lives or dies.
Stop, Krypto. Leave it. Ow, ow, stop. Ow, stop. Crypto, ow, ow, stop it, stop. Sit, stay.
I'll have you know that Isaac insisted on that clip, even though I think it doesn't get across much that anyone who owns a dog experiences every moment of their lives anyway.
That's the whole point. Superman, like when he says to the dog, leave it, I'm like, how many times have you said leave it to your dog? Do you know what I mean? It's like one of the best things about this movie is imbuing Superman with these like universal, mundane human things, but just elevated, right? So like Krypto, if he doesn't leave it, he's going to like literally destroy something because the dog can fly and has super strength.
It's actually also a very James Gunn thing, right? It's very Guardians of the Galaxy to establish early on, as the scene does, just sort of a bunch of scruffy, normal folks who happen to have, metahuman powers. Yeah. But Steve, I wanted to start with you on this one. This movie has made quite a splash. It was the third biggest take at the box office, I think, of the year so far. The first two being, movies for kids, Minecraft and Lilo and Stitch. This is arguably a movie for adults and kids. So this is sort of the first, non-children's movie to make a big box office bundle this year. And it's also created some right-wing backlash and some culture wars online. So I think there's a lot to say about this Superman. But just as a movie, what do you think of it?
So pulling back for 1 second, he's this total, kind of wonderful, in a way, anachronism in theory, because, as you say, it was the product of two Jewish American sensibilities. He was profoundly anti-fascist, and it was kind of a precipitate of all of American sentimentality about our own nobility put into this super saturated and really ultimately like very one-dimensional character. And I always think of that. Do you know that Flaming Lips song?
Love that Flaming Lips song. It's Waiting for Superman from the Soft Bulletin, right?
Ah.
Tell everybody, waiting for Superman, that they should try to hold on best they can.
I think the overwhelming effect of that song is it's melancholy, your sense of being stranded and belated because you're still waiting for Superman. I mean, that song really packs a wallop because of that. It's like we live in, and especially now, right? We live in a world where supervillains are actually real. Cartoon supervillains are now flesh and blood. They now control the infrastructural guts of reality. They're claiming ownership over everything that they don't already own, which is turning out to be precious little. They have weapons in space that they control with the push of a button. But Superman is still fake, right? So the moment came around at last for this IP and this property because we are fucking waiting for Superman. I admired the movie, and it has its effect, like kind of weirdly, genuinely affecting moments. I mean, the whole point of the movie is that he's like, the dramatic problem of Superman is also that he's invulnerable. Like, he just never loses. Like, there's just one magic substance that can weaken him and make him somewhat vulnerable to us. But this movie takes the possibility of Superman's vulnerability way beyond the boundaries that have been tested in the past. It begins with him not only losing a fight and not only losing the public because of his intervention in a strategic conflict abroad, but also becoming the object of like our worst self, right? If he's the precipitate of our best self, or at least our sentimental notion of ourselves as Americans, as exalted and capable of doing the right thing and being ultimately strong, hegemonically strong, but not abusing that authority, our worst self is the Lex Luthor character, who's clearly a stand-in for Elon Musk, but also just the shit posters, the culture of detraction, like endless vituperative, anonymous detraction, which has started to be his kryptonite at the beginning of this movie. All of these are really strong choices. I wished I had liked it more as a movie. I found myself struggling with the tone a little bit and the dramatic art. I'm still learning how I feel about this movie, so I'm curious to hear what you guys thought.
Well, I think the struggle with the tone, the movie struggles with its tone in a lot of ways, because like there's this weird thing going on where James Gunn is actually a very glib filmmaker, and his background is in trauma pictures and edgelordy, purposefully B-movie schlock. And then he is making this incredibly sincere, optimistic, idealistic film. There's like a part of Gunn that wants to take the piss out of all of this material. And then there's the part of Gunn, I'm saying as an artist, not as a human being, I know nothing about him as a human being, who wants to be like sincere and optimistic. And so I do think the film struggles a bit with those two things. And some really interesting stuff comes out of all of that. Like I actually found all the Justice Gang stuff very funny, for example. I thought the scene where an elevator is rocking so that you can see this one woman's breasts bounce over and over and over again, less so. So I do think the movie has that problem. And of course it devolves into 30 minutes of CGI punching at the end, which all of these movies have to devolve into, which after seeing the most recent Mission Impossible, where you have these like amazing stunts done by a guy with no stuntman and, like they make it look as realistic as possible is just kind of disappointing that we're still doing that. I enjoyed the movie a lot though. I mean, I know I just listed a bunch of complaints, but I actually enjoyed the movie a lot. I think it is like that, first generation MCU movie that you might actually go see on a date night and look forward to seeing, like Iron Man or Iron Man 3 even, or, whatever it is. But it also has the same incoherence that those movies do, on kind of a political, thematic, everything level.
I'm going to stand up for this movie. I think I liked it better than either of you by far. And, while I agree that it is ultimately a superhero movie that falls victim to some of those cliches that sort of have to be in there, and I will tell you the things that made this one feel fresh and different and new to me, and that make me understand why it did so well at the box office, which hardly any of these movies have recently. Like, let's note, every Marvel movie and every movie of this sort has been bombing for the last few years, right? Like, audiences are losing interest, yet a lot of energy was sparked by this Superman. I could tell just by the conversations online about it. It is short. It's 2 hours long, 2 hours and 9 minutes if you stay for the whole credit sequence, which has a little teaser at the end, which is just a funny, sweet one. It's not some sort of, big myth-making thing. And David Cornsweet is Superman. It's a complete discovery. I mean, like, he is Superman. He feels like he belongs in that role. He does manage to sell that tone of sweetness and sincerity and non-irony and idealism without seeming hokey. He reminds me of Christopher Reeve and this movie is clearly in the tradition of those Richard Donner movies, Superman and Superman 2 from the 70s and 80s, including the John Williams score, which I wish was used a little bit more because it's just such a great, great theme, but it does pop up now and then. So the length, the sincerity and idealism, the casting of David Cornsweet and Rachel Brosnahan, who even as a non-Mrs. Maisel fan, I thought she was a perfect Lois Lane. They have actual chemistry. They actually seem like they have a romantic and sexual connection. And not that a movie that's essentially made for all audiences and all countries and kids is going to have, a lot of raunch in it, but they actually seem like they're dating. So that to me outweighed a lot of the punch stuff. And also, I mean, I'm going to say it, like, the world does need a Superman right now. Like these moments where, there's some huge battle going on that's about to topple the entire city of Metropolis, but Superman takes a moment to save a squirrel. It's almost like Gunn is pointedly underlining, right, that there is someone who's motivated sheerly by goodness. There's a moment that Lois Lane says to him something like, but you just find everyone beautiful, and the idea of there being someone who is both powerful and cared about us is so overwhelming in this moment that I actually got a little teary in some moments of this movie. I should also point out that I'm in this sort of perfect demographic for Christopher Reeve, idealistic Superman love, having had one of my earliest crushes as a preteen be watching Christopher Reeve on the big screen, flying with Margot Kidder. These movies don't quite rise to that level, but they have that spirit, and I appreciated that.
Dana, that is so beautifully put. Someone who's, however you put it, someone who's all powerful but cares about us, right? We just have come to associate power with malevolence in a way that is so inimical to the moment in which Superman was created and how it spoke to that moment and our best selves. I mean, there's a couple of moments where he just suddenly comes into frame, fucking Superman, right? Like just the most kind of regressive and almost borderline infantile of these pajama wearing, saviors, right? And he like kind of floats up into the camera and he's just muscle bound and he's red, white, and fucking blue. and he's got the hair. I mean, I'm just gonna say it. It's like connected in some way to a friend of mine's father who was rescued from the Mauthausen death camp, right, by Iowa farm boys and New Jersey farm boys who taught him how to drive a stick and gave him Wrigley's gun. And he emigrated to the United States, became a professor at Yale School of Management. He was not an unsophisticated person, but had inside him the notion that America was ineradicably a good place, right? And so the only way to get Americans to do the right thing is through a sentimental self-image is good. And instead what we have is an incredible non-foundation of cynicism and corrosive mutual suspicion and hatreds. Like, there's just an odd power to this movie.
Do you know that Richard Rorty book, Achieving Our Country?
Of course.
Yeah.
I've written about it.
Oh, okay. Well, in that book, which is an amazing book that everyone who listens to Gabfest should read, it's like a 2-hour audiobook. Just listen to it. He talks about the necessity for the liberal and left to create positive nationalist myths, right? He's like, we've torn everything down, which is not unimportant that we do that. But it is actually important that you have some kind of, not 100% accurate, because no myth can be, like aspirational myth of the left of what America can be at its best, that we have to have those things. There are parts of this movie and parts of that Superman myth that are very useful for that you're talking about, Steve, right? That it's like, what is the left-wing optimistic version of America? Can we find that? Can we build that? Now, I will say that I think the MAGA freak out over this movie way overestimates how left-wing it actually is and what its actual politics are, right? Because it has that kind of self-negating politics that blockbusters have to have, except for the fact that Elon Musk is clearly the villain. But I do think that it points us in the direction of, like, you can build an interesting myth about the good qualities of America that is maybe a little cheesy or whatever, and maybe a little inaccurate, but is still able to inspire us towards doing something and towards being a better people and nation.
All right, we need to close, but I will say that the right-wing backlash does tell us something important, right? Which is that the masks are off in terms of a good guy just simply being their enemy now, right? I mean, someone who wills the good of humanity is now seen by them as a woke DEI superhero.
Well, and the mask is off in another way, which is that, James Gunn, a lot of it is stirred up by people who haven't seen the movie because James Gunn said Superman is an immigrant story, which obviously it is, right? Superman is actually, on some ways, the ideal 1 or 2 years ago, MAGA immigrant. He is a white, high-skilled, super skilled, in fact, laborer who abandons his culture to fully assimilate into ours as an adoptee of presumably Christian Midwesterner, white Midwestern farmers, right? What could be more MAGA than that? But they hate even that. And they have just made it. And, Trump has now broken with Elon Musk over H-1B visas. It's like very clear that their nativism actually extends to everything. They don't want anyone coming here. That's how they're going to preserve things. So I do think that it's a telling conflict, even if it's mostly built off of total bullshit.
All right. Well, the movie is James Gunn's Superman. See it, as far as I'm concerned, just for the dreamy David Cornswet, who's a great discovery in this role. It's in theaters now. You know what doesn't belong in epic summer plans? Getting burned by your old wireless bill. You should be planning beach trips and barbecues, and your wireless bill should not be holding you back. That's why you should switch to Mint Mobile. Mint Mobile was not my provider before, but in order for me to talk about the service with some experience with it, they sent me a SIM card and a 3-month membership, so they are now my carrier and will be for the next few months. And I have to say, I'm considering switching for good when this plan runs out, because in addition to providing exactly the same service as my previous provider, high-speed data, unlimited talk and text, international plans that you can use for free in any country, Mint Mobile is also much, much cheaper than my previous plan. So if they continue to have these low prices for their good service, I'm sticking with them. This year, skip breaking a sweat and breaking the bank. Get this new customer offer and your 3-month unlimited wireless plan for just $15 a month. at mintmobile.com/culture. That's mintmobile.com/culture. It's the time in our show where we talk about business. Our only piece of business this week is to tell you about our Slate Plus segment, which this week is going to be about Scott Rudin, the super producer of theater and film, who was sort of canceled, who has been on a hiatus from his work for a while because of allegations of bullying, of bad bosshood, and other bad behavior, is back. He plans to stage at least 4 Broadway shows in the next couple of years. And yeah, he's basically canceled his own cancellation and returned to the entertainment industry. So we'll discuss him as a figure and the fact that people are now returning from their cancellation, it seems, en masse. If you're a Slate Plus member, you'll hear that as a separate segment in your feed. And if you're not a Slate Plus member, you could become one by signing up at slate.com/cultureplus. When you're a member, you get ad-free podcasts, you get bonus content like the segment I just described, and you'll get unlimited access to all of the writing and all the podcasting on Slate. I should also mention that you'll be supporting our work and the work of our colleagues. So please, if you can, sign up today at slate.com/cultureplus. Once again, that's slate.com/cultureplus. And back to the show. In the culture at large, as on this show, we don't seem to be able to stop talking about Lena Dunham. A couple months ago, we did a Plus segment on this show about her essay in The New Yorker. She wrote about leaving New York City to start a new life in London with her husband, the musician Luis Felber. In getting ready for this week's segment about her new Netflix show, Too Much, which is co-created by Dunham and Felber and stars the comedian Meg Stalter, I realized that New Yorker essay was, in fact, a canny publicity move on Dunham's part. It placed her, the creator and star of Girls, back in the conversation just at the moment that her new show was about to premiere, and here it is. In Too Much, Meg Stalter plays Jessica Salmon, a Dunham proxy who moves to London after the painful breakup of a long-term relationship and falls in love with an English indie musician played by Will Sharp. They're both in their 30s, and for different reasons, they're wary of getting close to somebody new. The show tracks the early days of their passionate but volatile romance, while also following the stories of some of Jessica's colleagues at work. She's a line producer for a commercial production company. Dunham herself plays a small part as Jessica's deeply depressed sister back in New York, who FaceTimes with her in London. The show also features an impressive array of excellent actors in smaller parts, including Richard E. Grant, Naomi Watts, Rhea Perlman, and Andrew Scott. Let's listen to a clip from the very first episode. We'll hear Meg Stalter as Jessica and Will Sharp as Felix, the man she's just met in a pub bathroom after hearing him play a solo set on her very first night in London.
You've got like an American accent, right?
No, I'm not. I don't have that. I don't have an American accent. It's Slovakian, actually.
I've actually always liked American things.
Really? Like what?
The Simpsons. I actually genuinely like The Simpsons.
Yeah, it's a good show.
Captain Crunch.
Yum.
Delicious. OxyContin, that's American, right? Big fan of that.
I love that. Yeah, it's my favorite breakfast.
Sorry, how long have you been here again?
I got in today. I got here today.
What the fuck?
I know.
What are you doing in like South London without any of your friends?
Well, do you want me to tell you the truth?
Okay, Isaac, I'm starting with you. And the reason I'm starting with you is because you know stuff about acting. You wrote a great book about acting, The Method, and directed a lot of theater and so forth. Started out as an actor yourself. And I will come clean and say that this show did not work for me at all. And the principal reason was because I don't think Meg Stalter can act. I don't think that she can carry this role. There may also be problems with the writing, which we can get into. But I think that if Lena Dunham herself or somebody else who had some performance chops other than Meg Stalter's were playing this role, I might be able to get with it. And I just found it very hard to get with. I should say that Stalter's background, although she has had a running role in the show Hacks, which is, I think, the kind of role she should have, where she's sort of like the funny weirdo sidekick. She has not led a show before, but is a successful comedian. I mean, I will say in Megan Stalter's favor that when she's in the right kind of role, she can be very funny. She has a specific shtick, which is a sort of halting, deadpan, non sequitur, sort of staccato blathering. And when she's doing that sort of character, somebody who like bursts out with these unexpected and inappropriate things that everyone else is embarrassed by, but not her, she can be quite funny. She does pretty much that character on Hacks and has been a scene stealer in those roles. The question is, can she carry being the protagonist of a show that really requires a lot more emotional range?
Can I reveal a little behind the scenes if people want to know how the Culture Gabfest sausage is made? I sent an email when we were looking at topics begging not to do this show because Meg Stalter is the lead. But then we just decided it's Lena Dunham's new show. And I actually think Lena Dunham is an important and very talented artist.
I love Girls. Yeah.
I think Girls is actually brilliant. I think Tiny Furniture is an amazing movie. I think Catherine Called Birdie is very good. I think if anything, she's underrated as an artist because she's treated as a discourse generation machine, like a nuclear power plant of discourse that's just like, like fission happens and then discourse occurs. But actually, she's like an incredibly talented actor, writer, and director. And so I was like, well, maybe I've just misjudged Megan Stalter. I'll give it a shot. And I have to tell you, I found the show physically painful to watch. Like, actually, I was in actual agony. It's very rare that this happens to me. It got to the point where I couldn't watch a full episode in one sitting because I hated it. It made me feel so bad. Not because of its material, but because it is so shoddily made on so many different levels. It is bizarrely ugly to look at. The jokes aren't particularly funny. The plot isn't all that interesting. And its lead performer is not charismatic, is not funny, and can't act. Dunham's charisma. Because you would have to have Lena Dunham's charisma to get away with any of the shit that character does and not have a dozen restraining orders against you and be thrown in an asylum. It's just totally bonkers to me. And so meanwhile, she is surrounded by a lot of great actors. And I will say that every actor who is famous prior to being on this show is good. I don't think there's a single actor who wasn't already a name who delivers a credible performance in it. But Richard E. Grant is great. Michael Zegan is great. Andrew Scott is great. Will Sharp is fucking amazing. Between this and White Lotus and Giri Haji, I just think he's a major talent. We read through in our research packet these befuddlingly positive notices for this show that often talked about the two of them having chemistry, which they do not have. It is just he's a good actor. I cannot flames on the side of my face level rage. And part of it is also the disappointment of seeing a great artist who I truly admire and I think is an important, artist screw the pooch this badly. It was truly an upsetting experience for me.
All right, Steve, this turned Isaac into Madeline Kahn with flames on the side of her face. What about you? Where'd you come down?
I'm right there with him, like syllable for syllable. This is how I felt. I mean, it's exactly that. It is unwatchable and forced, to watch it against the spirit and the letter of the Geneva Convention. Your head frozen in place, the screen in front of you.
Did you have to get the eyeballs opened and with drops like in Clockwork Orange?
The Clockwork Orange style, yes. And I just wonder a couple of things. One is whether the role of the fuck up in a society ruled by fuck ups hasn't sort of shifted a little bit. And, there was obviously something liberating and has been something liberating about women claiming for themselves rights that are so implicit they're just barely conscious of them, that men have awarded themselves from time immemorial to be, for example, a fuck up. It's totally coded male, has been traditionally coded male for women to appropriate that. I'm thinking now about aspects of Girls, Jezebel, obviously all kinds of Twitter personalities. That was a big thing, and it's something about that I think has gotten a little long in the tooth. This woman is such a chaos agent. You cannot believe that she has the career that she has because which is a good one. She's a highly competent line producer. We're told that, but we're not shown that. What we're shown is that she's an absolutely hopeless, neurotic fuck up who cannot barely show up on time, and once there, perform elementary tasks without massively fucking up. She does it in her personal life. Night one in London, she lights herself on fire inexplicably. She has a huge meeting she's supposed to make. She stays up the entire night in ways that are just sort of mildly sickening because you're like, just fucking go to bed, right? I mean, she's just like maximally self-undermining and self-destructive in ways that are impossible to describe as attractive or charming. She's a fucking chaos agent. And so you're confronted as a viewer with this interesting mystery, which is that this totally traditionally good-looking to the point of sumptuous young man, immediately takes an interest in her I personally couldn't see the basis for it. And I understand that at a certain moment and in a certain fiction, the onus is on me to wonder whether I'm insufficiently enlightened, as a feminist, to not see that discrepancy as problematic. His suavite, his good looks, his self-possession, all of them are turned. He's sort of the male equivalent of the manic pixie dream girl, right? And he's gifting all of that on first sight of this woman who's just collapsing in every single category of life and is willing to take the burden of being a partner to her on almost immediately. And I understand that the arc of the show is complicating him and his motivations or whatever, but that to me was a suspension of disbelief I just couldn't go with. And then it's not funny, it's not charming, it's not believable, it's not credible in the least along several different dimensions. And also just the fish out of water, like the American in England. It's so played. It's just terrible. It's terrible. But Dana, you're up next. You're batting third.
I mean, I feel bad in a way because I get no pleasure. I think we probably should have listened to Isaac and not done the show because I don't like for us all to agree negatively on something. It feels
agreed.
It feels bad, and I don't feel like, well, Lena Dunham's done. I'm still interested in what she does next. I agree with you both that she's a great talent, and this is a misfire. I hope that it doesn't get renewed so that she opens up the space to do something else. I think this Will Sharp character, and I think, Steve, you kind of nailed it with the manic pixie. It's true that his character has his own issues, and those get revealed a little bit more later on in some episodes that are better because they feature more Will Sharp and less Megan Stalter. But just as an example of something early in the show where I feel like that manic pixie thing gets in the way of just the believability of the romance itself, even if you wanted to watch this purely as like a sweet fantasy of a romance, right? There's this moment that he shows her, Steve, you'll get the pathos of this, Paddington,
Yes.
His favorite movie, which she's never seen, right? Like, new dreamy boyfriend wants to show you Paddington, and he's sitting there crying at the Paddington movie because he loves it so much. It's the most adorable thing ever. And the Megan Stalter character is on her phone looking at Instagram jealously of her, her rival's Instagram feed and her boyfriend. The sound is on, which is also just like a plot hole. Like, he would notice that she was listening audibly to something, but he is not aware that she's sitting there on social media while he's trying to show her his favorite movie that means so much to him. And I thought, okay, well, this is a setup for a fight, right? Like, this is going to lead to him saying, look, you're being a total dick to me right now, and can you please focus on this thing that's meaningful to me, right? But that really never happens. Like, within moments, they're having sex on the couch, and it's completely fine that she ignored his movie to look at social media the entire time. Like, it just, I feel like there's a real Mary Sue element where this character never has to pay for the shitty things she does to her boyfriend because he's so good and so forgiving that she just gets away with it all.
And also, guys, he's watching Paddington 1, not Paddington 2. It's like
one of the best films of the 21st century, as Steve has established.
Yes, that is a true outrage. That might be the greatest outrage of the show, that he's watching Paddington 1 and not Paddington 2.
No, it's because he's setting her up. He wants to have a Paddington double feature with her, but she doesn't have the presence and the focus.
You have to earn the right to see P2.
Yes, which this television show does not.
No.
All right, well, we're sorry, Lena. We still care about what you do next, but this show did not work for any of us. Maybe you can watch it on Netflix and see if it works for you. It's too much, and it's streaming now.
This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy. Just drop in some details about yourself and see if you're eligible to save money when you bundle your home and auto policies. The process only takes minutes, and it could mean hundreds more in your pocket. Visit Progressive.com after this episode to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states.
The spirit of innovation is deeply ingrained in America, and Google is helping Americans innovate in ways both big and small. Central Texas Regional Mobility Authority is using Google AI to create smarter tolling systems and improve traffic flow for Texans. This is a new era of American innovation. Find out more at g.co/American innovation.
The British experimental theatre company Punch Drunk, best known for their smash hit international production Sleep No More, which ran in New York at least, from 2009 until early this year, has just mounted another interactive installation. It's called Viola's Room. It's patterned after a one-night-only theatrical experience that one of its creators, Felix Barrett, saw in London in the year 2000. So co-directing with Hector Harkness and with set design by Casey J. Andrews, Barrett has recreated something like that experience at The Shed, a performance space in NYC. I think they're also hoping to take it around to different locations if it's a success here. We went when this was just at its beginning, still in previews, you, me, Steve, and our producer Ben, and experienced Viola's Room. I want to talk about what that means. But before that, because Sleep No More was such a hit, if any of our listeners have had any sort of, big interactive theatrical experience, it's likely to be Sleep No More. Isaac, can you tell me about that show so we can contrast it to this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's really fascinating and in Viola's Room, there's a preamble that the staff gives you. And one of the things they say is there are no performers. And the reason why they say that is that, of course, in Sleep No More, there were many performers. So Sleep No More was like truly interactive. You're wandering a big space. You can kind of choose which directions you go in. There are performers. They interact with you. I think occasionally they kiss you. They interact with you. You can sort of follow your bliss wherever it goes.
And it was sort of Macbeth inspired?
Based on Macbeth. It's inspired by Macbeth. And kind of narrative emerges out of that experience, right? There is not... Viola's Room is actually very different from that, in that there are no performers. You wear noise-canceling headphones and a story is told to you as you walk through an environment. It's incredibly linear. They, in fact, tell you, you have to move to wherever there is light. Right? They tell you that very early on. Follow the light and that will lead you through it. It's very linear. It is telling a linear story. It's adapted from a turn-of-the-century weird fiction piece called The Moon Slave by Barry Payne, which is a great name if you're going to be a weird fiction author. It's got and you're just moving through this environment. You're not interacting with people. You don't have choice. And so that is actually like a huge departure from Sleep No More, which had dozens of employees and lots of rooms for you to go and explore and things you could discover, and no two people's experience were exactly the same, and you could go to it again and again and again and get a different experience each time.
All right, well, before I go to Steve, I want to listen to a little bit of the narration from the show, which is done by Helena Bonham Carter. I didn't realize that when we were going through. I don't think that I would have recognized her voice, but she's got the right voice and the right spooky Tim Burton vibe for this sort of thing. So here's a little bit of what you hear on your noise-canceling headphones as you're going through Viola's Room.
Let me tell you a story from a long, long time ago. On the cusp of the year, in the moment of silence after the clock struck, Princess Viola was born. She learned to crawl across the slippery ballroom floor, and by the time she was walking, she could win any game of hide-and-seek the palace staff were instructed to play. She was a fast wisp of a child, listening at doorways, rolling her marbles down the wide banister, crawling on hands and knees through the dusty, secret ways, hiding for hours at a time. She thought she knew every inch of that place and its grounds, knew all of its secrets. It was not true.
All right, Steve, having heard a little bit of that spooky narration, can you talk us through what we experienced as we did the Viola's Room?
So you're wearing, as you said, these noise cancellation headphones through which you get Helena Bonham Carter's, reading of this story from the turn of the 19th to the 20th century. And as she's narrating it, you get these light cues that are in their way relatively subtle, right? It's not like some giant arrow or something. Effectively, you're almost always in a darkened, various degrees of darkness as you go. Though right at the very beginning, I should say, you go into what is Viola's room. Presumably, it looks like an exact reproduction of a early sort of mid-teenage year girl's bedroom. Maybe she's younger, a little bit younger. And there are all kinds of clues. There's period posters on the walls, I believe from the 90s, that a teenager might have in their room. I mean, it's Viola, so it's a girl. There's a Buffy poster, I think. And there are, I believe, 5 or 6 surfaces on which you could lie down, and that clearly it seems set up for a sleepover. Like, so a girl is having her friends over for a sleepover. You lie down on the 5 or 6 people that in your particular cohort all lie down on the surface. The narration begins in earnest. And what appears to be happening, as I understand it, is I believe this is a story that this girl, Viola, who, has read and connected with, and it has opened up her imagination into various other realities and dreamscapes related to this narrative, but not literally tied to it on a note by note, beat by beat, character by character basis. And you then exit Viola's room, and you're in what must be, I think, ultimately like a large open warehouse space, though you perceive it only as a series of kind of very narrow passageways that are that have been established by muslin. Apparently, they're like miles and miles of hanging muslin in order to make this maze that you move through, following these light cues. And the muslin is multi-purpose. If it's lit a certain way, sort of front lit from the space you're in, it can be wall-like and opaque. But if it's lit from the back, you can create these shadowscapes that can be moving. Those are quite powerful visually, or various other, sort of tableau vivant style, or like diorama style places. Images. You come upon various rooms subsequently that have varying degrees of tactility. So one has, for example, sand on the floor. You see miniaturized versions of the world being described in the story that then in subsequent rooms are maximalized. So a very distinctive looking kind of romantically creepy tree is seen in miniature. A mansion is seen in miniature, and then at one point you're in the dining room of the mansion, like full human scaled. There's the tree at one point becomes a focal point of a room. It's full sized as well. These are dramatic, sort of dreamscapes coming to life. I don't know whether my interpretation of it is correct. And then you arc back around to Viola's room. Having described it, I have a lot to say about how I felt about it, but I really want to hear you guys address that first.
Yeah, I mean, what the environment is leading you to do is you sort of go through these interstitial places that are sometimes hallways, sometimes there's these muslin caves, stuff like that. And then as the story cycles back through the same locations over and over and over again, you're going back to, I mean, it's obviously different spaces, right? But they've been transformed in some way. So a tree figures very prominently in the story, and you see the tree more than once, and it's decorated in different ways. Or there will be this, sometimes you have this kind of bird's eye view of this beautiful expanse of garden, and sometimes the space gets very enclosed. Sometimes there's dirt on the floor.
And you're barefoot, which is actually important because a lot of these textures, you actually feel them with your feet.
You're barefoot. There's bespoke smells. There's a very interesting article, I think, at the New York Times recently about how they invented the bespoke smells. I really enjoyed it. I think it's a great date night. Like Anne and I went together and I was like, this is a lovely date night. Like, this is such a cool New York thing to do on a date. I don't think it's like a particularly significant work. I think it's fun. I think it's worth doing. I think it's very interesting that Sleep No More had a lot of labor problems and then their next piece has no actors in it. I just want to footnote that. It is a haunted house. That is what it really is. It is a haunted house that takes its cues from weird fiction as opposed to from like slasher movies. And I've gone to a lot of haunted houses recently because I have a kid who loves haunted houses. And I was like, oh, this is like that. But instead of like a guy with a chainsaw chasing us, it's like the walls are closing in. So it's like a mature, high-end haunted house.
Right.
And on those grounds, I actually found it very, very enjoyable.
I mean, I'm really glad we did it. It's fun to talk about. It was fun to experience. I had a similar idea of while doing it of sort of, ooh, I live in New York and get to do cool things like crawl through muslin curtains and walk barefoot on fake moss. But ultimately, as a piece of theater, and that's another question I want to ask you, like, is this theater, right? But as a cultural experience, it was interesting. As a sort of moving oneself through a dramatic narrative, I found it quite disappointing. I mean, the story is spooky and atmospheric. I don't want to give anything away about what it's about, and I'm also not completely sure that I understood it. But insofar as it's an exploration of sort of a young girl's fantasy life and, her moving into this imaginary space that then becomes a real space, that was all kind of theoretically interesting. But if it's going to be a haunted house, I kind of wanted it to pack a little more punch. I didn't think it was scary enough. They told us at the beginning, there are no jump scares. You don't need to worry about that. And that's good. I'm glad that somebody, in a skeleton costume didn't leap out screaming or something.
In a tree, like a tree with a dude inside.
But all the scariness was just atmosphere, and I think I was sort of waiting for a moment that we would walk into some room where I would feel like, oh, now I get it. Like now the conceptual, thrust of this piece is all coming together. And, that either it's sort of utterly terrifying or extremely emotionally moving. And instead, I sort of felt like I'm being told a ghost story around a fire, and, that's kind of spooky and atmospheric. And at the same time, I'm, the fear comes from basically what's going to be in the next room, right? So the whole time you're doing it, you're thinking, is the next room going to be the one where I experience some really intense visceral emotion? And to me, that never happened.
It is funny, and I wonder if Ben, I'm looking in the booth to see if Ben feels the same way. The thing I kept thinking about while experiencing this was the video game Gone Home.
Yes, 100%.
Okay, yes, amazing. Okay, so Gone Home, which is a brilliant video game that everyone should play, is this kind of same spooky, it's just at a computer monitor because you're playing it. You're wandering through a house that appears to be haunted, discovering all these clues about the generations of sort of horrific history in your own family. A woman's come home from college to her parents' house in Oregon, and no one is home. And so she's wandering through the house trying to find them, and she discovers this basement she didn't know was there, and just these records of generations of problems in her family. And I was waiting, as much as I enjoyed Viola's room, I was waiting for it to have that feeling of and now you've discovered this amazing thing that has happened. And it just never achieves. I'm not even sure that liftoff is something it is trying to do. Because it certainly does, to agree with you, Dana, comes nowhere near that. And remains.
But it sets it up as if it's something it's trying to do. I mean, I kept trying to think
well, that's
what am I needing to retain from this room in order to understand the next room? And there isn't really anything. You just kind of go through and passively experience it. So that was my question about, is this theater? I don't think it's really theater. It's sort of set. It's kind of a triumph of set design, storytelling, sound design, atmospherics, but it's not really theater at all.
I think it's interesting because it's too conventional to be what most people would call installation art. Right? Because installation art has to be incomprehensible, I guess. But that's what it actually is. It's actually like a very sophisticated piece of installation art that has a narrative, that and a narrative experience. I do not actually think I would technically call this a work of theater. I don't know. I mean, it just
in that theater has to involve some form of live performance.
Well,
right?
It's interesting in my drama of the 21st century class at NYU, the first question I ask the students once we do all the icebreakers and stuff is what actually are the minimum requirements for something to be a work of theater? And we never end up agreeing, but I do think one of them is a live performer and a live spectator. I think if you are missing those are the fundamental things that Peter Brook said in The Empty Space. You need a space, you need a human being, and you need another human. And then in The Open Door, he clarifies, he says, I was wrong. You need a space, a human being, and another human being watching them. But those are the fundamental aspects of theater. If you remove all the actors, I actually do believe that definitionally you are no longer making theater. And so to me, it's a work of installation art or a haunted house or something. But Steve, you said you had a lot of thoughts about it, and here we have been blabbing away. What's going on with you, man?
Very quickly, I'll just say that I thought it was kind of wallop-free in a way, and I wanted that. I wanted the payoff that really didn't come. I wasn't quite sure how it all cohered precisely. It was just kind of an atmospheric exercise. A little vaporous in the end, if technically impressive at points. But what I would say is there's one thing that really landed for me, which is that I quintessentially had a daughter who came into being substantially alone in her room, during somewhat fragile antisocial, I don't want to overstate that, or development. She was definitely a person who took, when she was little, refuge in a room that became a kind of the room itself became almost like an art installation. I mean, not in an overly unusual way, but it was covered in her art, her drawing, her paintings. There were just stacks of books everywhere, diaries, and then collage, really elaborate collage work on the gable ceiling. And so the idea, the wallop that this piece did pack was this idea of this journey from pre-adolescence into early adolescence and deep into adolescence that a child takes, partially alone in their own room if they're an imaginative kid who's, you know, attracted to the written word in some deep way. And presumably this Viola has made a deep connection with this short story from which proliferated all kinds of imaginative, you know, sort of waking dreamscapes or whatever you want to call it that we've just passed through. That had a weird kind of power to it. I'm not sure I found it interesting, to be clear. I found this aspect of it interesting. It left me a little wan.
Fun date night, though.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Who wouldn't want to crawl through curtains with a loved one?
Exactly.
All right. Well, the piece is Viola's Room. It's playing at the Shed in New York City right now. And I presume if it's a success, it will go to other places in the future. Sleep No More went all over the world. This doesn't seem like it will catch on as much, but maybe you'll get a chance to see it elsewhere.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Hey, it's Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. Now, I was looking for fun ways to tell you that Mint's offer of unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month is back. So I thought it would be fun if we made $15 bills. But it turns out that's very illegal. So there goes my big idea for the commercial. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
Well, it's the moment in the show when we endorse. Isaac, what did you experience this week that you want us all to know?
Well, can I give you one plug and one endorsement? Am I allowed to plug my own thing
Absolutely.
in endorsements? I don't, again, I'm a guest here. I don't want to pee on the wallpaper or whatever. If you're a Criterion Channel subscriber, I did a live evening length interview with the great Brian Cox at St. Anne's, in which we talk about his career. We look at clips from specific movies, including movies he loves in detail. It's part of this series that I do with them called The Craft of Acting. The first one was with Ethan Hawke, also at St. Anne's. This is the second one. It debuted on the Criterion Channel July 1st. I'm extremely proud of it. And I really hope if you enjoy, hear my voice and you were like, I wonder what his face is also like. I recommend it. I'm really, really proud of it. I think check it out. You'll learn a lot about acting and about Brian, who's an amazing, amazing actor.
There is a young actor in my household who will be really excited to see that. Succession fan and Method fan.
Good. That's good. That's good. It's also very funny because it's Criterion, we only talk about movies. So Succession is never mentioned. Except he swears at one point and says, I'm sorry, I played a role recently in which I curse a lot and it's taken over me. The thing that I wanted to plug is something I saw that comes out this weekend, and I saw a screening of it. And that is Eddington, the Ari Aster film with Joaquin Phoenix and Pedro Pascal and many other famous people.
I'm seeing that tonight and reviewing it this week.
Amazing. I'm going to say this right now. You might hate the movie. You might love the movie. Lots of people hated the movie. I loved the movie. That's not why I'm saying you have to see it. The reason why you have to see it is you have to see it before the discourse around it happens. You have to see it and come to your own opinion because it is an intentionally extremely provocative movie. And so what's going to happen is eventually you're going to see it as like a thing to argue about as opposed to a work of art, but it is a work of art. So go see it this weekend. Don't read Dana's review until after you see it, and just have the experience for yourself and decide for yourself what it is before our terrible internet discourse, not Dana's review, but I just mean like, Blue Sky posts and stuff like that has its way with it. Go see it so you can think about it for yourself.
Yeah, I know that was the movie at Cannes this year that was like you either walk out of it vomiting or you give it a 7-minute standing ovation, which are always the ones that I want to see.
Right. Sam Adams was standing. Justin Chang was barfing. It's like, yeah, totally.
Steve, what about you? What have you got?
A couple things very quickly. First, I finally finished 2666, the Bologna book. I mean,
it's so good.
It's an overwhelming experience, right? It is sort of sublime. It's Rabelais. I mean, it's clearly like almost the argument of the book is that the space opened up for the novel primally by Don Quixote. The first novel was a sort of heuristic convenience for describing it, that led to the rise and ascent of the great middle class art form, the medium of middle class self-understanding, which is the novel, is kind of reached its apex and its end and its collapse in 2666 in a way. And so it's very Cervantes, it's very Rabelaisian. It's got this gigantic kind of returning to the roots of the novel as almost a non-novel in some sense. Like the world has become way too diffuse. There has no core value system. It has nothing resembling enough of a mainstream or way of being within it that allows for there to be a cogent literary aesthetic that reflects it back to itself accurately. And so instead you have this 5-part, gigantic, interrelated, but in many ways just sort of weirdly, hauntingly diffuse and strategically incoherent canvas, like a massive canvas. And at the end, the effect of the totality of that is overwhelmingly powerful, and that he just undeniably possesses literary genius. It's just an extraordinary work, and you're either gonna vomit or give it a standing 12-minute standing ovation. I mean,
or do both at the same time in that prison sequence.
Exactly, you'll be vomiting as you ovate for 12 minutes. But that's not my endorsement. My endorsement is I finally saw Cleo from 5 to 7. It's the breakthrough feature 1962 from the French New Wave director Agnes Varda. I finally saw it. It's just this wonderful film. It's exactly that. It follows this one major character, Florence, who's a kind of up-and-coming singer, would-be diva, as she awaits what she believes will be a really dire medical diagnosis, and it follows her sort of in real time. There are all these candid street scenes that were revolutionary at the time, but then also these beautifully cinematically wrought moments of like plays of like she goes in to buy a hat. It's just a tour de force of like working with the camera and reflective surfaces, and but at the center of it is the actress Corinne Marchand, who's just, I'd never seen her in anything. She's just totally captivating. It's in the pantheon, with 400 Blows and Breathless. And it was a shame that I'd never seen it. But what a fucking wonderful piece of cinema and foundational work of cinema. I just loved the movie. It was great to go back to the early phase of the French New Wave and see something that, for some unforgivable reason, one hadn't already seen. So if you've never seen it, Cleo from 5 to 7 is just such a great film.
Yeah, it's true, because Agnes Varda became such a hit in her late period of making documentaries. People forget that she had decades and decades of making feature films of all sorts, including musicals and just every form you could imagine. And it doesn't seem like a lot of French New Wave roundups tended to include that movie, which is, I agree, absolutely foundational and wonderful.
Yeah, I love it too.
All right, my endorsement this week is not unlike in its sort of genre what I endorsed last week, which was that essay on Jaws that's not quite a film review, but was like just a sort of a beautiful reflection on Jaws by a poet. This is another piece of writing on film on Superman. It's a review, I guess, but it's really more of an essay about the new Superman movie, the character of Superman, and Steve, precisely that thing that I mentioned in our discussion of Superman that you, I believe, singled out about the idea of an all-powerful being who is also good, and just what a welcome and salutary thing that is at this particular moment in history. So this is a piece by Walter Chaw, who is film critic. I believe he also was an instructor, teaches film and film criticism. He's a wonderful writer who doesn't quite write in the mode of regular commercial film criticism. I mean, like me boringly saying, oh, here is whatever, who directed this movie and what it means for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This is much more of a personal reflection on why, as an immigrant, a child of immigrants, why Walter Chaw was so indescribably moved by Superman, and whether or not you love the movie, I think that this essay will make you weep. It's just called Superman, and it's on Walter's site, Film Freak Central, which is a fun place to cruise around and read some of his wonderful writing. All right, we'll put a link to all of those things, of course, on our show page, as always, so go there if you want to follow up on some of these endorsements. And of course, you can always drop us an email at culturefest@slate.com. Our producer is Benjamin Frisch. Our production assistant is Daniel Hirsch. And the composer of our theme music is Nicholas Bertel. The executive producer of Slate Podcasts is Mia Lobel. For Stephen Metcalf and Isaac Butler, I'm Dana Stevens saying thank you so much for being a listener, and we'll talk to you all again next week.
Hi, I'm Josh Levine. My podcast, The Queen, tells the story of Linda Taylor. She was a con artist, a kidnapper, and maybe even a murderer. She was also given the title the Welfare Queen, and her story was used by Ronald Reagan to justify slashing aid to the poor. Now, it's time to hear her real story. Over the course of 4 episodes, you'll find out what was done to Linda Taylor, what she did to others, and what was done in her name.
The great lesson of this, for me, is that people will come to their own conclusions based on what their prejudices are.
Subscribe to The Queen on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening right now.